Hey everyone, this is Ty. We're going to be looking at the Lightning Network, what it is, how it works, and some of the pros and cons with the Lightning Network. Now, as most of you probably know, Bitcoin has come into some scaling problems with slow transaction times and increased transaction costs. Bitcoin can only do about 7 transactions per second, whereas someone like Visa can do up to 65,000 transactions per second. Now, this wasn't a problem with Bitcoin at the start, but as Bitcoin scaled, this has become a problem. So we're going to look into why the Lightning Network is going to help solve that and what it's going to do to do that. So let's take a look.
To help us better understand the Lightning Network, let's look at the current blockchain and the problems with the blockchain. Alice wants to buy ice cream from Bob. Alice is going to send Bitcoin through the blockchain to Bob. The problem with this is the slow transaction time. It could take 4 to 5 hours to get that Bitcoin to Bob through the blockchain, which is unrealistic because who's going to wait 4 to 5 hours with the ice cream melting for that transaction to confirm? There's also a transaction fee. With the current blockchain transaction fee, it could be $20 to $30, which would be more than the ice cream. Now let's take a look at how the Lightning Network works with the Bitcoin blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain takes 10 minutes per block, average of 7 transactions per second. The Lightning Network will be off-chain from the blockchain. We have Alice and Bob with 5 Bitcoin each. They transact with each other very frequently and want to start a payment channel on the Lightning Network. They deposit 5 Bitcoin each on the Lightning Network for a total of 10 Bitcoin. That then gets broadcasted to the blockchain that Alice and Bob have 10 Bitcoin. This will now open the payment channel for the Lightning Network. Alice and Bob are free to transact with each other as much as they want without touching the blockchain. Alice then buys ice cream from Bob for 1 Bitcoin. We're saying 1 Bitcoin to keep things simplistic. Alice then has 4 Bitcoin and Bob has 6 Bitcoin on the Lightning Network ledger. We still have only touched the blockchain once to open the network. Alice then decides she wants another ice cream. She buys another ice cream from Bob the next day for 1 Bitcoin. That updates the ledger between them. Alice then decides she doesn't like the ice cream and wants to send it back to Bob. She sends back the ice cream to Bob for a refund. Bob gives her a refund and the ledger is updated that Alice has 4 Bitcoin and Bob has 6 Bitcoin. We've only touched the blockchain once, and Alice or Bob can close this payment channel when they want. If they decide they want to close the channel, it will update on the blockchain that Alice has 4 Bitcoin and Bob has 6 Bitcoin, and that payment channel has now been closed. They can start a time lock with that payment channel for, say, 10 days, 15 days, and it will automatically close in that set amount of time. Or they can have an indefinite amount. Each time they do a transaction, it will be a multi-signature address. So both of them will need to sign with their private key. Now, realistically, that's not how the Lightning Network is actually going to work. Not everybody's going to want to start a payment channel between everybody. Plus, they're going to acquire 2 transaction costs for opening that channel and closing it. What will probably happen is Alice and Bob want to transact, but they do not have a direct route to each other with a payment channel. Now we have what's called a hub. That hub has a lot of Bitcoin that can connect to a lot of people. Alice will then be connected to the ice cream truck through the hub, through Joe, and then Joe is connected to the ice cream truck. Alice will then send Bitcoin to the hub, which will go to Joe and then to Bob for the ice cream. Alice can keep that route to the hub open indefinitely and transact with as many people as they want. So it's kind of like going to be a bank. You will upload like 5 Bitcoin and you can transact with that 5 Bitcoin as much as you want. When you want your Bitcoin back, you will close that payment channel from the hub and then you will have your Bitcoin. You can keep that payment channel open indefinitely or you can have a time lock on it. Now that we have an idea of how the Lightning Network works, let's look at some of the pros and cons. The first pro with the Lightning Network is the fast transactions. As long as Alice and Bob are connected somehow on any channel through the nodes, they can make instant transactions between each other through the Lightning Network. The next one is the low fees. As long as Alice and Bob are connected, they can transact with virtually 0 fees. If it's connected to a hub and they charge fees to pass that, it'll still be very small. It'll also reduce the throughput on the Bitcoin network by handling most of the transactions through the Lightning Network. This will lower the Bitcoin transaction costs overall. There will also be increased privacy with onion routing. Those of you that don't know what onion routing is, torrents use onion routing. Only the sender and the receiver know where it's going. Everybody in between only knows what the next node is. I encourage you to take a look at onion routing on how it actually works. Now let's take a look at some of the cons with the Lightning Network. The first one is increased centralization. People argue that the Lightning Network will be very centralized with the hubs, that a lot of people will be using the hubs to transact on the Lightning Network, therefore causing centralization because these hubs will be the main gateway to all the other channels. The next one is decreased security. People believe that there will be a decreased security on the Lightning Network, that the nodes passed through can do something malicious. There are counter steps that protect people with nodes withholding funds. The next one is the max transactions is the max Bitcoin on a channel. Let me explain this. If Alice wants to pay Bob 2 Bitcoin and she's connected to Bob through Joe, well then Joe would have to have at least 2 Bitcoin to send to Bob. So you can only send the max amount of Bitcoin on the least amount of Bitcoin on a channel.
I hope this video helped explain how the Lightning Network actually works. I try to make it as simplistic as I can because it can be a little overwhelming and complex. Now, what you have to remember is most of the wallets will do this in the back end as adoption grows. The testnet and the mainnet is open with the Lightning Network and you can join. The mainnet has over 250 nodes and 750 channels, and this is growing very quickly. I do believe the Lightning Network will help Bitcoin scale and reduce transaction times and reduce transaction fees. I'm excited about the Lightning Network and it's only going to grow and help Bitcoin. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comment section and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you.